Sam had lived in the neighborhood for more than 10 years. His house stood at the end of a quiet street, where tall trees lined the road and children often played in the evenings. He liked the calm of his place. He enjoyed simple things like planting flowers, fixing old tools, and sitting on his porch with a cup of tea. He was not the type to make noise or disturb anyone. One sunny afternoon, Sam was in his front yard, kneeling beside a flower bed. He was planting bright yellow marigolds, humming softly to himself. He felt the warm soil between his fingers and thought about how peaceful the day was. That peace broke when he heard the sound of heels clicking against the pavement. He looked up and saw a woman walking toward his house. She was not just walking but marching, as if every step had a purpose. She wore big sunglasses, carried a clipboard, and her chin was slightly raised. Her name was Karen, and she was the head of the homeowners association. People in the neighborhood already knew her for being strict. She believed the rules of the HOA had to be followed without question. Karen stopped in front of Sam's house and studied the yard with sharp eyes. She tapped her clipboard with a pen, as if preparing to write something serious. Then she spoke in a loud voice, making sure Sam heard her clearly. "Your grass is too long," she announced. Sam set down his gardening tools and stood up slowly. He brushed dirt from his hands and looked at her. "I just cut it 2 days ago," he replied, keeping his voice calm. Karen frowned. "Rules are rules. The lawn must be kept at exactly the right length. I'll make a note of this violation." She scribbled something on her clipboard with quick strokes. Sam stayed quiet. He had seen people like her before, people who cared more about control than about kindness. He thought it would end with a warning, but Karen had other plans. Instead of leaving, she walked around the yard, pointing at small things. "This garden gnome is not approved by the HOA," she said. "That wooden bench is not listed in your property design. And that bird feeder is against the guidelines too. You will need to remove them." Sam felt frustration rising inside him, but he kept his voice steady. "These are just small things. They are not hurting anyone." Karen did not listen. She wrote more notes and gave him a look that told him she believed she was in charge. Without another word, she turned and walked away, heels clicking on the pavement again. Sam shook his head and went back to his gardening. He thought she would forget about it soon. After all, it was only a garden and some decorations. But Karen was not the type to forget. The next morning, Sam stepped outside with his watering can. The sun was bright, and the air was fresh. He had barely started watering the flowers when he heard the sound of car engines. He turned and saw 2 police cars stop in front of his house. His stomach tightened. He had done nothing wrong, yet the sight of flashing lights made him uneasy. Karen was there too. She stood beside the officers, arms folded, a confident smile on her face. She spoke quickly, pointing at Sam as if she had caught him in a crime. "He has been disturbing the peace," she told the officers. "He makes noise, refuses to follow rules, and bothers neighbors." Sam put down the watering can and walked toward the officers. "Good morning," he said. "I'm not sure what this is about. I was just watering my garden." The officers looked from Karen to Sam. They seemed puzzled, but they still asked him questions. "Have you been causing trouble?" one of them asked. "No," Sam answered simply. "I keep to myself. I work on my garden, fix things around my house, and mind my own business." The officers wrote down notes while Karen stood with a smirk, as if she had already won. Sam remained calm, though inside he felt both frustration and disbelief. He could not understand why someone would go so far just to cause problems for him. When the officers finally left, Karen gave him one last look. "You'll regret not following the rules," she said firmly. Then she turned and walked away. Sam stayed silent. He watched her leave, his jaw tight, his mind turning. She believed she had power over him, but she did not know the full truth. There was something she had not learned yet, something that would soon turn the whole situation upside down. Because Sam was not just another homeowner. He was the landlord of several houses in the neighborhood, and one of those houses belonged to Karen. And when the moment came, she would be the one caught off guard. The days after the police visit felt strange for Sam. He tried to return to his normal life, watering his plants, repairing old tools, and reading books on his porch, but he could feel eyes on him. Whenever he stepped outside, he noticed Karen walking by with her clipboard, glancing at his yard as if waiting to find a new problem. One evening, as Sam sat outside drinking tea, his neighbor Mark came over. Mark was a friendly man who lived across the street with his wife and 2 children. He leaned on the wooden fence and said quietly, "I saw what happened the other day. Karen called the police on you, didn't she?" Sam nodded slowly. "She said I was disturbing the peace. I was only watering the garden." Mark sighed. "She's been doing this to a lot of people. Last month she gave me a warning because my trash bins were out for a few hours longer than the rule allowed. She acts like she owns the whole neighborhood." Sam gave a small smile. "Well, she doesn't. Rules are one thing, but this is going too far." Mark lowered his voice even more. "Be careful, Sam. She knows how to twist things. Some people are afraid to speak against her. They think she'll find ways to make their lives difficult." Sam thanked Mark for his concern, but inside, he felt no fear. He had a card to play, a secret Karen knew nothing about. For now, he kept it hidden, watching events unfold. The next week, Karen struck again. This time, she mailed Sam an official notice from the HOA. The letter listed several violations. His lawn was improperly maintained, his bench was unauthorized property, and his bird feeder was an attraction for pests. The notice came with a fine. Sam read the letter carefully, then folded it and placed it in a drawer. He did not argue, he did not call the HOA office, and he did not remove the items from his yard. Instead, he carried on with his day as usual. But Karen noticed. She noticed that Sam did not obey her demands. That evening, she stormed into the HOA meeting, which was held in the community center. A few neighbors sat around a long table, tired after a long day, while Karen stood at the front. "We have a serious problem," she declared, waving her clipboard. "One of the homeowners refuses to follow the rules. He ignores notices, refuses to make changes, and continues to break guidelines. If we allow this, the whole neighborhood will fall apart." A few neighbors murmured, unsure. They had all seen Sam and knew he was quiet and polite. He never caused trouble. One neighbor spoke up. "Are you sure this is such a big problem? Sam keeps his yard clean. He's not loud. He's not hurting anyone." Karen shot a sharp look at the man. "If one person ignores the rules, then others will follow. This is about discipline. This is about order." Most of the neighbors stayed silent. They did not want to get into a fight with Karen. She had a way of making people feel small. The meeting ended with no real decision, but Karen walked out feeling powerful, certain she was winning. The next morning, Sam woke up early and looked out his window. To his surprise, he saw Karen standing in front of his house again, this time with a camera. She was taking pictures of his yard, snapping one photo after another. Sam stepped outside and greeted her politely. "Good morning." Karen lowered the camera only for a second. "These pictures will go to the HOA board. Maybe then you'll take the rules seriously." Sam nodded calmly. "I see. Thank you for letting me know." Karen frowned, confused by his calmness. Most people argued with her or grew upset, but Sam stayed polite, almost as if he did not care. She could not understand it. What Karen did not realize was that the very house she lived in, only 3 streets away, belonged to Sam. He had bought it years ago as an investment and rented it out. She was his tenant. Sam knew that one day soon, the truth would come out. And when it did, Karen would no longer be the one holding power. The following week moved slowly, but tension in the neighborhood grew stronger. Sam noticed how some neighbors avoided his eyes when he walked by, while others gave him quick nods of support. Word of his conflict with Karen had spread. Some people believed him, others feared her, but everyone was watching. Sam went on with his life as if nothing was wrong. He watered his plants, swept his porch, and smiled at children riding bicycles past his house. Inside, though, he was waiting. He was patient, because he knew timing mattered. If he revealed the truth too soon, Karen might twist it to her advantage. But if he waited until the right moment, her own actions would undo her. One afternoon, while Sam was fixing the fence in his backyard, his phone buzzed. It was a message from the property management office that handled his rental houses. The message was about the rent of one particular tenant. The name on the screen made Sam pause. It was Karen. She had been late with her last payment. Sam chuckled quietly to himself. Not only was she making his life harder as head of the HOA, but she was also behind on her rent to him. The irony was almost too much. That evening, as Sam sat with his tea, his neighbor Mark came again. "She's been talking at the community center," Mark said in a low voice. "She told people you might be forced to leave if you don't follow the rules." Sam raised his eyebrows but did not look worried. "She doesn't have that kind of power," he said calmly. Mark shook his head. "I know, but some people believe her. They're scared." Sam smiled slightly. "Don't worry. Truth has its own way of coming out." Meanwhile, Karen grew more restless. She could not understand why Sam never argued back. Most people complained, shouted, or tried to bargain when she gave them warnings, but Sam remained calm. His silence felt like defiance, and that only made her more determined. A few days later, Karen held another HOA meeting. She came prepared with printed photos of Sam's yard and copies of the violation notices. She placed them on the table for everyone to see. "This man is destroying the image of our neighborhood," she declared. "If we do not act, soon everyone will ignore the rules." Some neighbors shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. A woman named Linda finally spoke. "Karen, his house looks fine. His flowers are neat, his lawn is green, and the place is clean. Why are we spending so much time on this?" Karen's cheeks turned red, but she kept her voice sharp. "Because rules exist for a reason. We cannot let one man think he is above them." Sam, who had quietly joined the meeting and taken a seat at the back, listened without interrupting. He watched how Karen grew more heated with every word. Finally, when the meeting ended, he stood up and walked out without a single comment. Karen saw him leave and felt unsettled. Why didn't he defend himself? Why didn't he fight back? That night, Sam sat at his desk and pulled out a folder. Inside were property documents for several houses in the neighborhood. One of them carried Karen's name on the tenant line. He looked at the paper for a long moment, then placed it back in the folder. He decided it was not yet the right time. The very next day, Karen tried a new tactic. She called the city inspector to complain about Sam's house. She claimed the structure was unsafe and the backyard fence was falling apart. When the inspector arrived, Sam greeted him politely, showed him around, and answered every question honestly. After a quick check, the inspector shook his head. "Everything here is fine," he said. "Your property is in good condition." Karen, who stood on the sidewalk watching, felt her control slipping. The inspector left with a friendly wave to Sam, ignoring her protests. Sam went back inside with a calm smile. He knew Karen's attempts were starting to look desperate. Neighbors noticed too. Whispers began spreading, not about Sam, but about Karen. People wondered why she was so focused on him, why she spent so much time chasing a man who caused no harm. Karen, however, could not stop. Her pride would not let her. She had convinced herself that winning against Sam was proof of her power. But she had no idea that every step she took was only leading her closer to a truth she would not be able to face. Because the landlord she was unknowingly fighting against was the very man she was trying to push out. And soon, Sam would no longer keep that truth hidden. The morning sun painted the houses in soft gold, and most neighbors were busy heading to work or walking their dogs. Sam sat on his porch, sipping tea and watching the street. He appeared calm, but his mind was sharp. He could feel change moving closer. Karen, on the other hand, was restless. She walked around the neighborhood with her clipboard, stopping at houses to check if the grass was cut or if the trash bins were in place. She tried to show authority, but her eyes often wandered toward Sam's house. No matter how many times she tried, she could not break him. That afternoon, Karen knocked on Sam's door. She did not wait long before he opened it. "Good afternoon," Sam greeted, his voice polite. Karen held up a paper. "This is your final notice. If you do not correct the violations, the HOA will take stronger action. You could face legal steps." Sam looked at the paper, then at her. "I see. Thank you for bringing it to me." Karen expected him to argue or defend himself, but he simply folded the paper and set it on a side table. His calmness unsettled her more than anger ever could. "You think this is a joke," Karen said sharply. "But you'll learn that the rules are not optional." Sam met her eyes. "I understand rules. But I also understand fairness." Karen's mouth opened as if she wanted to argue more, but no words came. She turned quickly and walked away, her heels clicking fast against the pavement. Later that evening, Sam took a quiet walk through the neighborhood. He greeted people kindly, and some stopped to chat. The more Karen tried to paint him as a problem, the more neighbors saw for themselves that he was respectful and calm. At the same time, whispers about Karen grew louder. Linda, the woman who had spoken in the meeting, told a few neighbors how unfair Karen was being. Mark shared his own stories of receiving unreasonable warnings. Slowly, people began to question Karen's leadership. Karen felt this shift, though no one said it directly to her. She noticed neighbors looking at her with less respect than before. She blamed Sam for it, convinced that he was working against her. One night, while Karen sat in her living room, she received a letter slipped under her door. She picked it up and frowned when she saw the name on the envelope. It was from the property management office. Inside was a simple reminder: her rent payment was overdue. Karen's face grew pale. She had been so focused on chasing Sam that she had forgotten about her own responsibilities. She told herself she would handle it later, but the thought of late rent made her uneasy. The next morning, Sam received a call from the management office. The staff informed him about Karen's overdue payment. Sam listened carefully, then gave calm instructions. Send her the official notice. Do everything by the book. He knew the time was drawing closer when Karen would finally learn who truly had the power. That same week, another HOA meeting was called. Karen stood once again at the front, raising her voice and pointing to photos of Sam's yard. But this time, the crowd was different. People shifted in their chairs, some rolled their eyes, and others openly sighed. Linda finally spoke again. Karen, we've heard enough. Sam's house is fine. You've spent weeks chasing him, and frankly, it feels personal. We should be using our time to improve the community, not to fight with one neighbor. Several others nodded. Even Mark raised his voice. I agree. This has gone too far. Karen's cheeks burned red, but she refused to back down. You all don't understand. If he gets away with this, then rules mean nothing. But the meeting ended with no one supporting her demands. She stormed out, her pride wounded deeper than before. Sam, who had quietly sat in the back, left with a calm smile. He knew the wall she had built around herself was cracking. Soon, she would face the truth she could not escape. Because the landlord she was fighting against was not some distant figure she could ignore. It was the very man she had been trying to crush. And her time of discovery was near. The days after the last HOA meeting were different from before. For the first time, Karen felt the weight of people's eyes on her. Neighbors who once nodded quickly and moved on now whispered to each other when she passed. Some avoided her altogether. She still walked with her clipboard, but her steps no longer carried the same confidence. Sam noticed the change but said nothing. He continued with his quiet life, trimming his flowers, repairing his fence, and sitting on his porch in the evenings. Yet he knew that the moment of truth was coming closer. One morning, Karen found another letter slipped under her door. It was from the property management office again, reminding her that her rent was still unpaid. This time, the notice carried a warning: if payment was not made soon, further action would be taken. Karen crumpled the letter in her fist. She felt anger and fear mix inside her. She had spent so much time chasing after Sam that she had neglected her own matters. But she told herself that it was just a small delay. She believed she could handle it later. Meanwhile, Sam received an update from the management office. The staff told him Karen had not responded to the reminders. Sam nodded and gave clear instructions. Follow procedure. Send the final notice. That same afternoon, as Sam walked down the street, he met Linda and Mark talking outside their homes. They waved him over. Sam, we've been thinking, Linda said kindly. Karen has been too hard on you, and most of us don't agree with her anymore. She makes rules sound more important than people. Mark nodded. She's losing support. Everyone sees how calm you've been. That speaks louder than anything she says. Sam smiled politely. I appreciate your words. Sometimes patience is stronger than anger. The neighbors admired his calmness. They realized he was not only standing against Karen but also showing an example of dignity. Karen, however, was not ready to give up. That evening, she walked to Sam's house again. She knocked on the door loudly until he opened it. "You think you've won," she said with sharp eyes. "But I'm not done. I'll make sure the board takes action against you." Sam looked at her without raising his voice. "Karen, I have nothing to hide. My home is clean, my yard is kept, and I disturb no one." Karen laughed coldly. "We'll see. People like you don't last long here." Sam gave a small nod and closed the door gently. He did not need to argue, because soon the truth would speak for him. 2 days later, the final rent notice reached Karen. She opened the envelope with trembling hands. The words on the paper made her heart sink. It stated that if rent was not paid immediately, her lease could be terminated. She sat on her couch, staring at the letter. For the first time, her confidence broke. She had spent so much energy on controlling others that she had ignored the one thing that could shake her own life. That night, Karen could not sleep. She walked back and forth in her living room, thinking of what to do. She considered calling the property management office to ask for more time, but pride held her back. She had built her image as someone powerful, someone who controlled the rules. To admit weakness now felt impossible. Sam, meanwhile, prepared for what was coming. He knew Karen would soon learn who her landlord was, and he was ready to face her with patience and fairness. He did not want revenge. He only wanted balance and respect to return to the neighborhood. The next morning, Karen walked outside to find several neighbors gathered in front of Sam's house. They were talking with him warmly, asking about his garden and admiring his flowers. She froze in place, feeling like an outsider in her own street. The sight of Sam smiling calmly with the neighbors made her chest tighten. Her power was slipping away, and deep inside, she knew why. She had chosen control over kindness, pride over respect. And now, the consequences were standing at her door. Very soon, the secret that Sam had kept would be revealed. And when that happened, Karen would finally understand that the man she tried to destroy was the very person who held her lease in his hands. The air in the neighborhood had grown heavier. Karen could sense it each time she walked outside. People no longer greeted her with respect. Instead, they gave short nods or turned away. The authority she once carried was slipping through her fingers like sand. But what weighed on her most was the rent notice. It sat on her kitchen table, the bold words staring back at her every time she walked past. Final warning. Immediate payment required. The thought of losing her home scared her, but she tried to push it aside. She told herself she would find a way. Sam, however, was calm as ever. He continued with his daily routine, watering plants, sweeping his porch, and sharing quiet conversations with neighbors. But inside, he knew the moment had come. Karen could not escape the truth much longer. The following week, the property management office arranged a meeting between the landlord and the tenant who was behind on payments. Sam agreed without hesitation. He knew exactly who he would be meeting. On the day of the meeting, Karen walked into the office with her usual air of pride. She wore dark glasses and carried her clipboard, as if holding onto her image gave her strength. She expected to meet some distant landlord, someone she could possibly argue with or persuade. But when she stepped inside the room, her steps froze. Sitting at the table with calm eyes and folded hands was Sam. For a moment, the room was silent. Karen's lips parted, but no sound came. Her clipboard slipped slightly in her grip. "Good morning," Sam said, his voice steady. Karen blinked, her mind racing. You're the landlord." Sam nodded. Yes. I own the house you live in. Her pride cracked like glass. She could not believe the man she had been chasing, threatening, and reporting was the very person who had power over her home. Her cheeks turned pale. She sat down slowly, unable to meet his eyes. The property manager cleared his throat and spoke in a formal tone. We are here to discuss the matter of late rent. Karen, you have received several notices. Payment has not been made. According to procedure, the landlord has the right to take further action. Karen could not look up. She gripped her pen tightly, her fingers trembling. I didn't realize, she muttered. Sam's calm voice filled the room. Karen, I never wanted conflict. I only wanted peace in the neighborhood. But you brought the police, wrote false violations, and stood against me at meetings. All while you were my tenant. His words were not angry, but they carried a quiet weight that pressed heavily on her. Karen felt smaller than she had ever felt before. She began, but her voice cracked. She cleared her throat. I thought I was protecting the neighborhood. Sam looked at her steadily. Rules should protect people, not hurt them. Respect matters more than control. The property manager nodded in agreement. This situation needs to be resolved quickly. Karen, you must decide whether you will pay your rent immediately or face termination of your lease. Karen swallowed hard. For the first time, she felt true fear of losing something important. All her talk of power and rule seemed meaningless now. Sam leaned back in his chair, still calm. I am not interested in revenge. But I expect fairness. If you want to continue living in the house, handle your responsibilities. If not, then perhaps it is better for you to move. Karen's head dropped lower. Her voice came out soft, almost broken. I will pay. I don't want to leave. The meeting ended with official notes from the property manager. Karen stood slowly and walked out, her steps heavier than ever. Outside, she leaned against the wall, her heart racing. Everything she had built, her pride, her image, her control, had been shaken in a single moment. Sam left the office quietly. He did not smile or gloat. For him, it was not about victory. It was about restoring balance. The truth was enough. From that day forward, the neighborhood would never look at Karen the same way again. The woman who once ruled with her clipboard and sharp tongue had been humbled. But whether she would truly change, or simply hide her pride deeper, was a question that only time could answer. The morning sun lit the neighborhood in a soft glow. Sam walked down his street, greeting neighbors who smiled warmly. After weeks of tension and conflict, the air felt lighter. People no longer whispered about fights or violations. Instead, they spoke quietly about kindness, patience, and fairness. Karen, however, still felt uneasy. The realization that Sam was her landlord had shaken her deeply. She walked past his house with a clipboard, but she no longer carried the same air of authority. Her steps were careful, as if each one reminded her of her mistakes. Inside her house, she sat quietly, thinking about what had happened. For the first time, she reflected on her actions without anger or pride. She realized that her insistence on rules and control had created fear rather than respect. She had judged Sam without understanding him, and she had underestimated the power of calm and patience. Sam, meanwhile, continued his quiet life. He mowed the lawn, planted new flowers, and repaired old fences. But he also made time to speak to neighbors, listening to their stories, offering advice, and sharing small moments of friendship. Slowly, the neighborhood began to feel like a true community again. One afternoon, Karen approached Sam's porch. She looked nervous, unsure of what to say. Sam smiled politely and gestured for her to sit on the bench nearby. I wanted to apologize, Karen said softly. I made a lot of mistakes. I focused on control instead of fairness. I didn't understand how my actions affected others, especially you. Sam nodded calmly. Thank you for saying that. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them. Karen looked down at her hands, then back at him. I want to do better. I want to follow the rules, but also respect the people around me. Sam smiled. That is the right approach. Rules are important, but so is kindness. Balance is the key. From that day forward, Karen's attitude began to change. She no longer focused on small violations or trying to control every detail of the neighborhood. Instead, she helped neighbors with events, supported community projects, and worked quietly to improve her own behavior. The neighborhood slowly returned to its peaceful rhythm. Children played freely in the streets, neighbors chatted over fences, and flowers bloomed in gardens along every corner. Sam's calm and patient approach had set an example, and Karen began to follow it, though at her own pace. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with orange and pink, Sam walked past Karen's house. She waved at him. He waved back. There was no tension, no fear, no anger, only mutual respect. Inside her house, Karen reflected on the weeks of conflict. She realized that her pride had nearly cost her her home and her reputation. The lessons she had learned were hard, but they were valuable. She now understood that true authority came not from control, but from fairness, patience, and respect. Sam returned home to his quiet porch and watched the street. He felt content. The conflict that had begun with a complaint about a lawn had ended with understanding and balance. He knew that the neighborhood was stronger because people had seen how calm, fair, and patient actions could overcome anger and pride. Karen, standing at her window, looked out at the neighborhood. She saw children playing, neighbors talking, and Sam smiling as he tended to his garden. She felt a sense of humility and respect. She knew that from now on, she would not try to control others with fear. Instead, she would lead with fairness, learning from the man she had once tried to challenge. Life in the neighborhood continued peacefully. Sam remained a quiet and respected figure, and Karen, now humbled, became a part of the community in a positive way. The tension that had once threatened to divide the street had turned into lessons of patience, understanding, and balance. The story of the conflict between the stubborn HOA leader and the calm landlord became an example for the neighborhood. People remembered it as a time when pride met patience, and when fairness, respect, and quiet strength restored harmony. And through it all, Sam remained steady, showing that kindness and wisdom could overcome even the strongest attempts to create conflict. The neighborhood had returned to peace, and everyone, including Karen, learned the true meaning of respect.